Greetings and welcome to Transformation Stories, thanks to Keto or Carnivore. I'm John, the Carnivore teacher, and today we're joined by a fantastic guest who has transformed her life. Her name is Maggie, and thank you for being here, Maggie.
Oh, thanks so much, John. Really nice to see you.
And it's great to see you again. I was with Maggie. She interviewed me about a year ago for her Off of the Couch podcast. And very wonderful, gracious interviewer. I hope I can return as equally a gracious interview for you. Um, let's start by introducing yourself by telling us a little bit about who you are, and if you can share a little bit about yourself before you changed your life through diet or diet and exercise.
Oh, thanks, John. So, yes, I've actually been interested in fitness for a very long time. I when I was I'm 57, so I'm about a decade older than you, I believe, or somewhere in that vicinity. And when I was in my 20s, I worked for the Forest Service, and which was kind of unusual for women at that time. We were a minority. It was just they were just starting to look for more women to work in that field because it had been predominantly men. So when I got the job, I felt a little bit intimidated that I wouldn't be able to keep up with the guys. That I felt like I had to put on an impressive performance, and so I started going to the gym, and I got into it was kind of a fitness culture. Everybody, and I want to take a little side note and say I want to express my um, sympathies to the people dealing with forest fires in Southern California and express my gratitude to all the firefighters. Because that's actually kind of where my story started. I got a job on the Sequoia National Forest, and they would take those of us that were in different departments and put us into kind of a ragtag fire crew where we would follow the hotshot crews if they were low on firefighters and needed some extra folks. And so we were not the elite. We were kind of these stragglers, but we helped out, um, and it was honestly, it's a lot harder today. The conditions are much drier and windier. Uh, so as much as I enjoyed doing it, usually if we were sent out for like a week or something, after about the third day, I was really ready to go home. But it didn't give me the incentive to get in a practice of I did some running, and we did mostly body weight exercises. And then later when I lived near a gym, I was lucky enough to learn Nautilus. That's when Nautilus studios were starting to pop up back in kind of the late 70s, early 80s. They were spreading. And so I was lucky enough to learn weight machines, which was kind of unusual for women in that day and age. We were doing Jane Fonda and jazzercise, but I learned weight training on Nautilus equipment. So fast forward maybe about 20 years, when I turned 40, I was I was looking for kind of work that I could work around my children, and I decided to become a personal trainer. My then brother-in-law was a personal trainer and kind of encouraged me, and I got into having a little fitness business, and sometimes it was my full-time thing, sometimes it was on the side. And then fast forward again, now I work at a YMCA just part-time. I'm semi-retired, and I teach people to use the weight machines. And also, you, I like the trifecta of nutrition, strength training, and cardio. And I think people can do it any number of ways. I don't think they have to do it on weight machines. But the combination of those three things is really magic for maintaining your health. And every year we discover more and more benefits to both diet and exercise, as you know. So that's the short version.
Okay. I didn't catch your age, 57?
67.
67, because you said I heard 57 and you said I think I'm a little all right, so yeah,
Well, you're
I'm
1965, so
right. Well, there you go. You
I'm a
know my age.
I'm about yeah, I'm
I'm
about
59.
8
I'll be
years
60
older
in
than
less than 6 months already. So
there you go.
yeah. All right. Nutrition, strength training, and cardio you discovered is the trifecta for really good health. Can you share your after? How did your body and maybe your emotions, your mind improve when you
Yeah.
improved your diet and your exercise?
Well, I've tried to keep up the exercise all along, which I think I'm very lucky in that, and I and sometimes it slips and sometimes it's better, but the diet I had, as you know, we were all about low fat for a while
Oh yeah.
and high carb, low fat, eat 6 small meals every couple hours, and you're always hungry. So somewhere around, I think 2013 and 2014, when podcasts started becoming popular and we all figured out how to listen to them and how to put them on our little MP3 players or whatever we happened to have at the time. I started learning about low carb. And also I was taking a class with kind of a master trainer that said that cholesterol was not really the cause of heart disease. It was really inflammation. And that shook me up because there's still cardiologists saying that cholesterol is the cause, and saturated fat. So I started looking at it differently and started eating a lower carb diet. Now, I'm not a carnivore like you, but the more and more we learn, the more I'm trying to um, learn to eat more protein foods and kind of look at my diet as how can I fit more protein foods in? And, maybe it's a little less carbs all the time. So what I was eating was sort of the my plate a little bit, and I know people hate the my plate, but actually it was more of dividing the plate in thirds, and it would be a protein, a carb, and a vegetable. And honestly, if you eat that way and you're getting a good exercise program, that's actually pretty good. If it's real food, there's no process, you've kind of weeded out the processed food. If you eat that way, you're not grabbing a little Debbie snack cakes or Hostess, Twinkies. You're not eating a lot of cakes and junk. So that is actually a pretty healthy way to go. I think it's a good place for a lot of people to start. On the other hand, if somebody obviously has an autoimmune disease or some medical need, they probably want to jump right to what you're doing, and a diet that weeds out pretty much everything except for the healthy foods. But I think there's wiggle room. And people say you can't outrun a bad diet, but you actually can a little bit. If you're getting healthy exercise and maintaining your muscle, muscle has a big influence on the immune system. The cardiovascular exercise has an influence on your brain health, getting the VO2 max, the aerobic exercise actually just helps get oxygen to your brain and kind of clean out those waste products. So they all three work in tandem. And if you can only do one, you can only do one, but you're better off to really work on all three tactics if you can.
All right, very, very well stated. And I agree with you. And I believe that every human being comes to the diet and routine that works for them through trial and error. Some people, like I came to low carb first, and then I went ketovore, and then I figured, let me try carnivore and see what everybody's raving about. And I noticed a big difference for me. And
Okay.
some people like to continue to have the fruits and vegetables, the nuts and the seeds. But I like what you said about, this is a way to weed out the processed food. If anybody, just like you said, if anybody just takes out the processed food, the ultra processed food, the fast food, the junk, we've improved our health dramatically. And then if you
Yeah.
tack on to that, like you mentioned, exercise, movement, and making sure your muscles are being worked and strong, then that is a recipe for good health. And I want to go down that road because that seems to be your forte, is the exercise, kind of like Casey Ruff. He
Yeah,
started as a trainer, and he talks about you a lot. Actually, he speaks very highly of you. So tell us
thank you.
your routine that you would recommend for somebody, say, 30s, 40s, who is not exercising, who wants to get in good shape. Tell me a regime or a routine that can help them exercise wise and diet wise.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I think well, it depends on what kind of shape they're actually in. So if somebody was very overweight, they would probably want to start with actually something seated because, we tell everybody walking is the best exercise, but say you're 350 pounds and if you try to do walking, you're going to get tired really quickly. Where if you do something seated, maybe a recumbent bike or even a chair exercise, you can maintain it for a little bit longer and work up more gradually. But if somebody's just sedentary, but they have good mobility, they might want to just start with walking for their cardio. But you should look for something you like to do. So maybe somebody loved to dance, they could try a Zumba class. But what we would recommend at the Y, which is after I got my personal training certificate, I went and volunteered at actually the same Y that I work at now. And they were then doing Nautilus. They had Nautilus equipment, and so we would take people through a weight training routine that worked each muscle group. We would do one set. You could do 1, 2, or 3 sets, but most of the benefit comes from the first set. So one set for each muscle group. So it's about 7, 8 exercises. It doesn't really take that long. And if you are a person who just doesn't have time to get to a gym, you don't live near a gym, or you have small children at home, you just can't maybe take that time, there's plenty of things you can do in your home. You can buy a set of dumbbells, you can buy a set of bands, and still do that one exercise for each muscle group, probably in under 10 minutes. If you're just doing something at home, do that twice a week. You want to do what we teach at the Y is the to work in a rep range of 8 to 12 repetitions. So what that means is if you can only do 6, your weights are too heavy. You want to be able to do at least 8. Once you can do 13, it's time to move up in weight. So, it's not written in gold. It came from the old Nautilus recommendations, and the Y sort of adopted that. Now most YMCAs have all types of fitness programs, but that was the basic protocol for strength training, was the 8 to 12 reps. It's a strength range. And you want to make sure you're tiring the muscle, but not losing your form. So some people are very want you to work to muscle failure, which is when you just can't do any more movement without losing your form and you've exhausted that muscle. I actually have people work to what I call muscle fatigue, so that they maybe could do a couple more reps, but they have definitely tired that muscle. A lot of women are just told to do like 10 reps, and maybe they could really do 15 or 20. So they're not getting into that range of muscle fatigue. They're not tiring that muscle. So they're not going to make the progress that we want. They're not going to get the benefits that we want. And there's so many benefits, not from just looking better in your bathing suit and maybe feeling better, but there's also benefits in aging, in your immune system. We just find out more and more in preventing osteoporosis, reversing osteoporosis, going into old age without needing, assisted walkers and wheelchairs, when we could actually still be on our feet and participating in life in a real active way.
It reminds me of Dr. Peter Attia. Are you familiar with him?
Yes.
Okay, I have. Well, I think I forget the name of the book I have, but
Outlive.
I think that's it. It's a real thick
It's a
one.
very popular book,
Right.
yeah.
I have that one. I read through most of that, and it reminds me of that we're not necessarily like I'm 59, but when I was younger, I wanted to get the gigantic muscle.
Yeah, yeah,
The guys want to get big. We want to get ripped. We want to have definition, and we're told to, tire the muscle until failure and
right.
keep going, and then rest, so that it can grow. But for most people, your advice, tire, work it out until it's a little fatigued. We want it to become dense, but
Yeah.
we don't necessarily want this gigantic growth. Especially women don't want bulky growth, I don't think.
Yeah, and
And
that's one of the myths that women will get bulky, but
right,
generally you're really gonna get leaner because you're gonna
leaner.
replace you probably have too much body fat and you're gonna increase the muscle, but you're gonna decrease the body fat, you're gonna look
Okay,
much better.
so that's not a myth that when you increase your muscle, the body fat gets decreased.
Because the tissue is more, metabolically active,
Uh-huh, makes
so if
sense.
you're eating the same, but you're weight training, you're gonna increase your muscle mass, and then the body fat will be burning, up with your increased metabolism, and hopefully you're doing some cardio as well and eating healthy, not a lot of sugary snacks and junk, so it should all work together.
Okay. Dr. Tia talked about, being able to carry your own luggage to the airport when you're
Right.
90, getting up from the ground without your arms, doing all these things that you should be able to do later on in life, and then doing exercises that help you maintain muscle mass for longevity for when we get older. And I really like, now that I'm going to be 60 soon, I'm starting to think that way and less,
Mhm.
oh, I want to look big. Uh,
Washboard abs.
Right, which I never had, and now I have a little bit. I could see it because of
Okay.
the lack of carbs. I don't eat a lot of carbs and sugar anymore, really any. So that's all it needed. And then I do go to the gym. I go to LA Fitness,
Oh, great.
and I stopped going there, during COVID, and then I restarted recently. But I had a home workout gym to stay
Excellent.
active, and I walk, I bicycle ride a lot, and I
Right.
just know that I feel so much better when I move. Just movement, activity, and sometimes it hurts, it's painful, it's uncomfortable, but I believe we should push through. Not pain, like dangerous pain, but push through some of the uncomfortable parts to get to the other side. And then, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. There's a benefit we get from pushing a little bit and being a little uncomfortable and breathing deeply. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think working to muscle fatigue, you're less likely to be sore. If you are sore, you may have done too much. It's not an emergency. You'll feel better in a few days. But if you're always working till you hurt, you're working too hard. But yeah, you do want I think the biggest thing is about consistency and I like to see people doing a small amount for the rest of their lives versus trying to do that really hard hour class of boot camp and then they're exhausted and then they start to make excuses on why they can't go because it's really too uncomfortable. There's sort of a fine line. You want to push yourself, you want to make a routine. It should be like taking a shower or brushing your teeth, that it's part of your week. Schedule it in. um, but it really shouldn't. You should actually feel better and not worse if you get a good exercise routine. It should give you some endorphins. Uh, you your muscles feel better. You feel more lively, more active. But if you're always hurting, then you're really doing too much.
Damage.
It's going to not pay off in the long run because your brain is going to tell you not to hurt yourself. And that's when you start coming up with those excuses not to go to the gym.
That makes sense. What would be your suggestion for rest periods? Because I heard from different trainers that the time that you're off is even more important, or equally as important as the times that you're stressing your muscles out by lifting weights. I mean, how valid is rest periods where you don't do
Yeah.
anything?
when I first started, we told people to work out with weights 3 times a week and leave a day in between. Now we actually tell them twice a week,
Oh,
especially seniors, I think, need more recovery. Obviously, if you're very young, you probably recover more quickly,
okay.
but really twice a week is recommended for weight training.
Hmm.
And I think where I differ from some of the people that are on podcasts giving you information on weight training. Some of them want you to do 5 sets, 8 sets a week. And I think that you have to understand that that's not necessary. If you're an athlete, maybe that's going to give you the best return. But most of us are not athletes. Most of us are training for old age or just general fitness. And the high intensity training, not high intensity interval training, which is more of a cardiovascular type training, but the high intensity weight training, which is the 8 to 12 repetitions to muscle fatigue or failure or close to failure, is really, you're really just doing 1 set of that exercise twice a week.
Hmm.
Some people even do a harder exercise to muscle failure, then they only do it once a week, and then you have that more time for recovery. But I think for most people, twice a week is good. The once a week all out, you're more likely to be sore. And I especially think for women, like we don't like to be sore. Some men are more competitive and don't feel like they got to go to work out
Right,
unless
right.
they're sore. But honestly, I think for most people, twice a week to that muscle fatigue is a really good place to aim for.
Okay, you mentioned HIT. And is there a difference between high intensity training and high interval?
There is a difference, and
Can
it's
you tell
very
me?
confusing because they sound
Yeah.
exactly the same. So, um, the Nautilus style workout is called high intensity training, and that's
Mhm.
where you can do a short workout with weights. Where high intensity interval training, sorry, a mouthful there, that would be your cardiovascular, cardiorespiratory workout that is a maybe you're on an elliptical or a bicycle or running, where you're doing intervals, and then your workout has like a warm up period, then you're doing a fast interval, and then a little bit of recovery. It can be a different amount of minutes. Some people do 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off. There's any variety of intervals. And I do think it is good to do some intervals like once a week, and then some other cardio that's maybe more steady state, a little bit slower a couple times a week, like your bike riding, movement, walking. Um, if you can add a cardio workout that does have a couple sprints or intervals, like once a week, there is shown to be a lot of benefit to that. But I think for a beginner, I would just worry about getting a routine, maybe doing some cardio like 3 times a week for at least 20 minutes, and then doing those 2 sessions of weight training.
Okay. So HIT, and is the other one called HIIT?
It
Because
is.
it is. Okay,
Yeah,
so with
high
another I.
intensity interval
Because they
training.
only say HIT and they don't distinguish
Right.
HIT.
Yes, and they're really
Okay.
two separate things. And if
I
you
do interval on the treadmill once a week. Tell
good.
me if I'm doing this right. I'm
Okay.
going to ask you while I have you here. It's a day of cardio where I'm not lifting any weights. I'm like just on the treadmill listening to some really fast classical music. I love classical music, but it's like really, really intense.
Uh-huh.
And I will wait till I get up to about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm elevating the treadmill till I get really high, and then I'll come down, and then I'll turn it up to almost 90, and I'm sprinting
Uh-huh.
very, very carefully so I don't trip and fall. And then I do that for as long as my till my heart says stop, probably
Okay.
a minute and a half. And then I'll
Okay.
pull it all the way down to like, you adjust the numbers all the way down to 1.5 or 2. And I look at my Apple Watch and it'll say 140, 150 beats per minute.
Uh-huh.
And I wait till it comes back down to like under 110,
Uh-huh.
which is several minutes. And
Yeah.
then I'll take it back up again and I'll do that
Yeah.
4 or 5 times. Am I doing that correctly?
That's excellent.
Okay.
I don't think you could have described it better, and then, but obviously a beginner is not going to follow your exact protocol. They're going to start where they are. Um, but actually, what you described is really good because they're going to have that high heartbeat with less effort if they're not in shape yet. So,
Okay.
no, I think that's perfect. And I had interviewed Brady Holmer, who's kind of an expert on VO2 max. He wrote a book about it. And what you just described is a really good workout. And to
Oh,
do that
great.
like once a week with those hard intervals, but not, some people do that, you want to do that every day or a number of times a week, and that's probably overtraining. So you're really doing it perfectly. And then
Okay.
adding your bike riding in for regular movement and a lower intensity workout other days. And then you just need a couple of days of strength training and you're perfect.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for answering that. While we're on that subject, would it be, you mentioned it would be different for somebody who's in their 20s versus in their 50s, 60s, 70s. What would you recommend for each decade?
Yeah, I would actually recommend the same thing. It's just that if they overdo it, they'll probably recover more easily,
Okay.
It doesn't mean they should be overtraining. And actually, a lot of people in their 20s are probably in not as good shape as we were in our 20s because the food quality has decreased
Right.
considerably.
I agree
And,
with that.
yeah,
I
and
agree with that. Yeah.
kind of the meal patterns, are not the same probably as when you and I were young, where they were a little stricter, and now people are much more likely to be ordering out or eating out, or a little more casual in their eating habits, and that's really to the detriment. So somebody in their 20s might not be as healthy as we were back then.
Yeah.
So
So the reason I started doing HIT is I heard that it helps your heart beat at rest beat slower. So I'm noticing, because I
okay,
measure it, that my resting heart rate is a little bit lower since I've been
uh-huh.
doing this, which is cool. I'll take a walk after dinner every night,
Oh, good for
and
you.
it's lower. It's
Okay.
lower than it used to be before I started high intensity interval running once a week. So I think I'm doing it right.
It
And
sounds perfect, and there was a recent study, and I'm not like Dr. Ben Bokikio, I can just name the studies off the top of my
yeah,
head and who did them, but I did hear about a study that took 50-year-olds that I think had not been exercising and put them through a pretty rigorous exercise program, and their heart got effectively 20 years younger.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Seriously?
Seriously, I heard
Wow.
that. It was Rhonda Patrick was talking about
Okay,
that
I know.
study,
Yeah.
so you can look up her,
Interesting.
some
I
of her
think Ben
recent information.
Beccuccio is going to be at Low Carb USA Boca this weekend, I think, and I'm going there, so
Oh,
I get
you
to see
are
him again.
going.
Yeah,
See, now I'm jealous.
it's in my town, so I just have to drive over, and
I think yeah,
I
very
was there
good.
last year, and it was
I
amazing.
will actually be there on live stream.
Oh, all
I'll
right.
wave at you
If
over
you
my
see the audience, see if you
camera.
can see me in the audience.
Yeah, and we actually met there last year.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
actually got to go last year, and I think I butted in on a
I think
conversation
yeah.
you were having with the guy sitting next to me, and so
Oh,
I
okay, that's
really
great.
enjoyed it so much. And yeah, Dr. Ben is incredible, and I would recommend his book to everybody, 15 Minutes to Fitness,
And the
because
guy himself is he in his 70s? I mean, he's
yeah, I
very
think he's in
fit.
his early 70s, and he's
He sounds, and I've
muscular.
listened to a few of his interviews with Casey Ruff, and the man is right on target. He just makes you want to listen to him. I learned so many things from him, so I'm anxious to hear from him. My next question for you is going back more towards diet part of this, because
Okay,
my channel is called The Carnivore Teacher, and I talk
right.
more about carnivore, but I also, I'm open to low carb and keto because I believe that we're taking out the processed food, the fast food, the starch, sugar, and the seed oil in excess. That's what it's all about. And I don't think it's black and white. I think it's degrees, and everybody has to find their own niche, what works for them in the moment, and then they adjust
Yeah.
as they move on in life. Um, Can you tell me what you eat in a day?
Um,
And has that changed?
yeah, and I tend to get a little off the rails a little bit over the holidays, and I'm working on
Easy
getting
to
back. But
do.
yeah, but in general, I eat some kind of lately I've been doing like a late breakfast that's usually just one or two eggs and maybe a piece of bacon or ham. So that my breakfast is low carb. For lunch, I really like soup, and I add extra collagen in it, and I um, try to get some kind of soup that's also, I wouldn't pick one that had pasta in it or anything like that. It would be some kind of a meat soup or maybe a chowder, and I put extra collagen in it. That's just what I like, especially in the winter. It might be
Mhm.
different in the summer. I might do more of a chef salady kind of thing in the summertime. And then for dinner, we usually just do like pro one, like I was saying, the split the plate in three. That's going to be a vegetable, a carb, and a protein. And the carb will just be like a small potato, or maybe half a sweet potato, or maybe some rice. And then the protein will be, chicken, fish, beef. Like actually, I have a chuck roast in the crock pot, and it does have carrots and potatoes in it. But I am, I obviously have done a lot of these interviews, and I am starting to, think about weaning off of that carb. But I don't think where I do get regular exercise, it doesn't seem to be a big factor. It's still considered a low carb diet. It's pretty much well under I think Mark Sisson says anything under 150 grams, and I think it's probably more between 50 and 100 grams of carbs. So it's certainly not a high carbohydrate diet. But that would be kind of how I structure my day.
Okay. Has that, what did you eat before and when did this change?
It's probably changed in about 2013 or
2013.
2014, and that's when I started hearing about the high fat, low carb, I think from dietdoctor.com, and I
Mhm.
started listening to Ben Greenfield. He was at the time running, doing Ironman triathlons, but he was experimenting with MCT oil and talking about, higher fat, and it just made that shift from the 6 meals a day, low low fat granola bar snacks, to a higher fat, yeah, more like a savory breakfast, and maybe a salad with meat in it for lunch, like a chicken or steak kind of salad with an olive oil dressing, and then I think I've always eaten a pretty similar kind of dinner that is just that maybe one serving of carbs and a protein and a vegetable. And now listening to you guys, if I don't eat a vegetable, I don't feel guilty. But
Isn't that interesting? We have been so, I don't want to say the word brainwashed, but we've
yeah,
been so conditioned that we have to have our
right,
vegetables. My father, eat your greens. And I was a little kid, they put it on the plate, and I'm like, no. And we weren't allowed to leave the table
right.
until we ate our greens. And, Popeye, and it's just part of culture that we must have it. And it's interesting that now, at least I believe, we're learning that we don't need it.
Yeah, and I remember your story that you had actually kidney stones, and so that probably came from your vegetables.
It came from I had a lot of spinach salads, a lot of dark chocolate, a lot of cinnamon, a lot of almond flour because I was
Uh-huh.
just doing keto. So I figured
Okay.
anything that was low in carb was good, and I didn't know not to look at the oxalate content. I didn't know what an oxalate was, and I went down and learned the hard way because that's how I learned things uh, with a terrible kidney stone. So, once something shocks you so
Yeah,
dramatically, like a terrible physical ailment, most people, and I was one of those people, it just like, put me on a different path.
right.
So I do believe that some people can be fine in moderation. I can't moderate sugar,
Yeah.
cake, candy. Do you have an issue with sweets? or did you have an
I would
issue?
say, yeah, I'm a little bit of a moderator that if I have like ice cream in the freezer, I will have a small serving. And I think we had talked before that I'll do some. I was making my own sugar-free ice cream,
Okay, yeah.
or maybe buying the Rebel, I
Hmm.
think it's called, the sugar-free, and once in a while having the real kind. And then lately I've been trying to switch to more of like a yogurt with berries. There's some, and I'm trying the different yogurts to see if I can find one that I like that doesn't have terrible additives.
Are you a good ingredient reader now? Are you an ingredient
I
detective?
think I've always been a pretty good ingredient reader. And I used to like plain yogurt, but when they started coming out with the good tasting vanilla ones that taste more like pudding, I had kind
Yeah.
of switched. So I'm trying to find one I like that doesn't have bad ingredients but still tastes good. But I think by just adding a few berries and maybe, sprinkle of like walnuts or something, it tastes like a dessert without really having really
But
bad.
you can moderate. You can just have a little bit and it's in the freezer and you don't
Mostly.
think about it constantly. Like I want more and more and more.
I couldn't have like a pack of like Oreos or cookies. In the house, we tend, well, actually, once in a while, John makes cookies, but he makes them out of like almond flour. And I think he uses maple syrup. And I can kind of moderate. I don't eat them all. I might eat one or two, a day. But we don't usually have a lot of sweets in the house, and we don't have usually poor quality sweets. So I kind of fall in between the
Okay.
moderator and the addictive behavior. Like if I eat something, it doesn't usually send me completely down a bad path, but I also don't like to have junk in the house. Potato chips, I definitely can't have in the house because
Ah, you're one of those people. Okay.
going
So you're the more of the savory and not so much the sweet, the salty, crunchy.
some of both. Yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
I,
Yeah,
I,
I've learned that trick too. The best protection from making me overdo something is to not have it in the house, and
yeah,
then I can abstain completely when it's not there. If it's
that's
there, I can use my will and moderate it, but I'm like, and it's in my brain. I'm like, I know
yeah,
it's there, and it's like gnawing on me. It's in there. Go get it.
right, right.
So when out of sight, out of mind works for me, big time. Um, we're all different, and that's why I like
Yeah,
these interviews. I like to get everybody's angle and point of view, and the audience can hear something uh, that you said that rings true with them and works for them. Is there anything that you can share about how when you did switch over to the lower carb and getting rid of more of the processed food? What did you say, 2013?
yeah. It was around then.
Did your weight drop? Did other health benefits improve? Like, what did you observe in your body and
I
emotions?
did. Yeah, because I think I have a sensitivity to wheat, or I think wheat is not a great food for me. I had asthma, and I was getting arthritis in my feet. I considered myself to have foot pain, and I was buying shoes that were. I was buying these kind of shoes like they were a little higher in the middle because they took the pressure off of your toes, and I don't have to do that anymore. I notice when I do go off the rails and start creeping back into eating breads, because we got this wonderful bakery like right down the street. Luckily they're moving away. And they make artisan sourdough, like I think people would consider it okay because it's fermented, special flour, all that. But I notice if I start eating it, then I start getting some of these symptoms back. In fact, I was using an inhaler and I was like, what's
Mm,
going on?
all
And
right.
my feet were starting to hurt. So that was a big change when I cut it out. That was a big change for
You
me.
think
I
it was
could
the
really
gluten?
tell. Probably. I'm not really sure. I
Hmm.
just know some things improved when I cut out like the breads. And I did that because I was going low carb. And then I really noticed a difference because I'm also a skier. I'm not a great skier, but I really enjoy it, and getting into those stiff boots. Like in those days, I thought, oh, what am I going to do? This is so hard to get my feet in these boots. And that was how many years ago? 2013. I'm not good at math. 12 years ago. And I still don't find the ski boots super comfortable to get in and out, but I'm not having the difficulty that I was having then, and
Did you lose weight when you switched to low carb?
well, I was also, um, when I was turning 55, I decided to do my first triathlon. Now, this was not an Ironman. This was a small community triathlon, and it was the easiest one actually,
Okay.
probably that you could find. It had like a quarter-mile swim, a 5K, and I think then it was like an 8-mile bike ride, and it was not steep. So I did start increasing my cardio as at about the same time as I was decreasing my carbs. So yeah, I did lose a little bit of weight, and I wasn't very overweight. I seemed to kind of gain and lose the same 10, 15 pounds over the years. And actually, I've had a little creep this winter. I confess, my ski pants are too tight in the
Mm.
waist. But it happens, so I'll have to get more active again. And I think that can slip, depending on how busy you get and everything. I think my weight training has kept up my cardio, and my diet have slipped a little this winter. So we'll have
Easy to
to
do,
get back on.
especially
I'm
during
working on
the
getting back on track.
during the holidays, the sugar holidays, and all the food. It's just all out there, and
Yes.
it's. I find it easy to abstain because it's just not in the house, even during the holidays. But a lot of people, it's there. When,
Yeah.
when it's there, it ends up
And
in the mouth.
yeah, and I think I struggle with how much
How
is
much
um
quantity? Yeah,
yeah, and we have our traditions, and we want to enjoy things,
right.
but we want to stay healthy, and it's all a matter of balance.
Hmm.
And but I do think as you weed out the junk, you your taste change, so that what might appealed to me 15 years ago, of that somebody bring donuts into work with it have colored sprinkles on them. Like now, it, I kind of cringe a little bit at some of that junk then. Sometimes I might, and I think it also depends on my day. If I'm really stressed out, I'm definitely more likely to eat something for comfort, like if it's, presented out on the counter at work, chocolate or something, or donuts or something like that. If I've really had a bad day, I'm going to justify it. But if I'm having a great day, I walk right past it. So there's definitely some variables for all of us, I think.
I think we're very good at justifying.
Yeah, yeah,
Self-talk, convincing ourselves, making excuses, and
right,
it's amazing what the brain does to get at something.
right.
It really is. Um, well, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share for our audience to help them become healthier, whether it's through diet or exercise? Some piece of advice, some last parting pieces of wisdom.
Sure. Well, I'd like to encourage people to, if they have wanted to go to a gym, to just try it. Don't A lot of people are intimidated, I think, especially
Mhm.
women, maybe women that haven't been in a gym culture before. They, are embarrassed, but you can go and just do like an orientation, maybe check out a couple gyms in your area. Um, and don't be afraid to ask. Nobody's watching you and making fun of you. If I see a heavy person working out in the gym, my thought is good for them. Good for them. They're working towards their goal, and nobody's making fun of you. Just, yeah, do an orientation. You can watch some YouTube videos to get an idea. It's really not an intimidating place. Most people that go to Hawaii, they go for the social connection and the encouragement. They encourage each other. It's really a great thing to do. And then if you don't have the time to go, find a little routine you can fit in your home. I think a lot of moms are very focused on their children and they think, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to work out. But really, you want to set that example for your children. And you also don't want your children to have to be taking care of you, 15 years before you need it because you haven't taken care of yourself.
Before we go, I was going to let that be the last thing, but I liked the home idea. As you mentioned, you can buy some weights, you can buy some bands. What are some things that people can buy that are pretty affordable to do some strength training at home?
Yeah, both dumbbells and bands are very affordable. You can usually just go to your nearest drugstore. A lot of them have dumbbells. You can obviously order different kinds of bands on Amazon or whatever website you like. I don't know if you're familiar with the X3. That's a pretty popular.
I've heard a lot about it, but I've never seen one. I don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, honestly, you can do that workout without purchasing the X3. You can just buy one of the bands and just hold it with your hands. You don't need to have the bar. Obviously, a strong power lifter or something going to want to have that metal bar, but it's just a band that attaches to a bar, and you can just use the band and hold it with your hands and step on it. You don't need to have the expensive equipment. Just start. You can very easily start with something inexpensive, and even body weight. There's plenty of body weight exercises you can do, and I stress the 8 to 12 repetitions, but actually a lot of the HIT trainers just use timing. So maybe you're doing the overhead press for like a minute and a half, and until you feel that muscle tire, or so there's just a real variety of things you can do in a very small amount of time for very little money.
Okay. I appreciate that. You are the owner or operator of Off of the Couch podcast. Can you share with the audience what that is, where people can find you there, or
Sure.
anywhere else on the internet so we can find you?
Yeah. Yeah. I originally was doing a little fitness business myself before I went to work at the Y, and it was originally called Personal Fitness Design, but then I changed it to Off of the Couch Fitness, and I started a podcast, I think about 3 years ago, and it was just really meant to inspire people to do some strength training. I see so many people, so many women doing like Weight Watchers and steps, and I have nothing against steps, but the benefits of an actual exercise program are so much more than just wandering around during the day and seeing if you got your steps in. And then Weight Watchers, I personally think, is terrible because you can eat, a low calorie diet full of crap, and you're not going to be healthy and you're going to be hungry. So I I just that's what made me want to start a podcast. I just wanted to put a little ripple effect and say, no, we're not going to starve ourselves and just do steps. We're going to do a little exercise program and eat real food, eat some good real food. And so that's why I started the podcast. And you can find it's called Off of the Couch, and it's on Apple and Spotify and probably some of the other sites as well. And you can find me at offofthecouch.com, and it's I don't keep my website up too much, but you can contact me through there, or I'm also on Instagram. I have 2 Instagrams. I have Off of the Couch, which I mostly end up posting pictures of my scenery and my dog. So Off of the Couch podcast, you can see the faces of the people I've interviewed and the different episodes, and you're in there. Your smiling face is you'll find it there.
All right. Okay, so we can find you at offofthecouch.com. We can find you on Instagram, and your podcasts are on Apple and Spotify. Are you on YouTube?
I am not on YouTube.
Not on YouTube. Okay. And
No, that way I don't have to wash my hair or change
so,
out of
so
my pajamas when I do an interview.
your podcasts are more audio. Okay, I
They're
get you.
audio
I get you.
only.
Yeah, I had to doll up here before I meet you.
Yes, yes.
Put my background up here. Put the nice shirt on.
Very nice.
And you look nice too.
Thank
So
you.
I want to thank you so much for joining me, agreeing to join me and answer questions for our audience, Maggie Steward. Much appreciated. And hopefully we can get together and see each other maybe in person at some
Yeah.
event soon, or certainly maybe another interview.
Very good. Thanks so much, John.
All right. Thank you. And you have a wonderful day.
You too.